My name is Ethan, and I am 34 years old. If you've ever been called selfish by the people who raised you, then you might understand how painful the story is. For years, my parents praised my younger brother while criticizing almost everything I did. No matter how hard I worked, it was never enough. Then one day, they demanded that I make a sacrifice that would change my entire future. When I refused, they called me selfish, ungrateful, and heartless. Relatives took their side. Friends heard only their version of the story. I felt completely alone. But a few months later, a secret about their favorite child came to light, and suddenly everyone understood why I had said no. Growing up, my younger brother Ryan was always the center of attention. My parents adored him. They celebrated every small achievement as if it were a major accomplishment. If he earned an average grade, they praised his effort. If I earned top grades, they simply expected it. Ryan received expensive gifts, extra privileges, and endless second chances. I received lectures about responsibility and hard work. At first, I thought that was just how families worked. As I got older, I realized the difference in treatment was impossible to ignore. When I was 16, I got a part-time job after school. I wanted to save money for college because I knew my parents were struggling financially. While I worked evenings and weekends, Ryan spent his time hanging out with friends. My parents never asked him to contribute. They said he should enjoy his youth. By the time I graduated, I had saved enough money to cover a significant portion of my education. Ryan, meanwhile, had no savings at all, but my parents promised they would help him when the time came. College was challenging, but I stayed focused. I worked during the day, attended classes at night, and eventually earned my degree. After graduation, I found a stable job and slowly built a comfortable life. Ryan took a different path. He changed majors multiple times, dropped out twice, and bounced between short-term jobs. Whenever he faced a problem, my parents stepped in to rescue him. If he couldn't pay rent, they helped. If he lost a job, they blamed his employer. If he made a mistake, there was always an excuse. Over the years, I learned to keep my distance. I still loved my family, but I stopped expecting fairness. Whenever my parents needed help with something reasonable, I was there. I drove them to appointments, fixed problems around their house, and helped with paperwork. Despite everything, I wanted to be a good son. Deep down, I hoped they would eventually see my efforts. Then, everything changed. One evening, my parents invited me over for dinner. Their tone on the phone sounded serious. When I arrived, Ryan was already there. He looked nervous, while my parents seemed unusually determined. After a few minutes of small talk, my father finally got to the point. Ryan was in financial trouble. Again. Except this time, the situation was much worse. He had accumulated a massive amount of debt. Credit cards were maxed out. Personal loans were overdue. Collection agencies were calling constantly. According to my parents, he was on the verge of losing everything. I listened quietly as they explained the situation. Then my mother looked directly at me and said they had a solution. They wanted me to take out a loan and use my savings to help Ryan. At first, I thought they were joking. They weren't. My parents had apparently discussed the idea for weeks before bringing it to me. They believed I was financially stable enough to solve the problem. They argued that families should support each other during difficult times. My father said Ryan just needed one more chance to get back on his feet. One more chance. I had heard that phrase my entire life. Asked Ryan how the debt happened. He avoided eye contact and gave vague answers. The more questions I asked, the less information I received. That alone made me uncomfortable. Then I said no. The reaction was immediate. My mother accused me of abandoning my family. My father said I was acting selfishly. Ryan claimed I cared more about money than people. By the end of the conversation, all three of them were angry. I left feeling shocked. Over the next few weeks, things became even worse. Relatives started calling me. Apparently, my parents had told everyone that I refused to help my struggling brother. They left out important details, of course. Most people assumed Ryan had experienced bad luck. They didn't know the full story. Family gatherings became uncomfortable. Aunts and uncles criticized me. Cousins questioned my decision. Some people implied that my success had made me arrogant. For the first time in my life, I seriously considered cutting contact with several relatives. Despite the pressure, I refused to change my mind. Something felt wrong. The entire situation seemed too secretive. Nobody could explain exactly where the money had gone. Whenever I asked for details, I received emotional arguments instead of answers. A few months later, the truth finally emerged. One afternoon, I received a phone call from a mutual friend of Ryan's. He sounded hesitant, but said I deserved to know what was happening. According to him, Ryan's debt wasn't caused by bad luck, medical bills, or unexpected emergencies. It was caused by gambling. Not occasional gambling. Serious gambling. For years, Ryan had been placing increasingly risky bets online. Whenever he lost money, he borrowed more in an attempt to recover his losses. Instead of solving the problem, he only made it worse. Eventually, the debt became impossible to hide. At first, I struggled to believe it. Then the evidence started appearing. Several people confirmed the story. Screenshots circulated. Financial records surfaced. Suddenly, the missing pieces made sense. Ryan hadn't been honest with anyone. What shocked me even more was discovering that my parents already knew. They had known for months. Instead of telling the family the truth, they created a different narrative. They portrayed Ryan as a victim of unfortunate circumstances because they didn't want him to face criticism. They hoped I would quietly pay the debt and prevent the secret from becoming public. When relatives learned what had really happened, opinions changed quickly. The same people who had called me selfish suddenly understood my position. Many apologized for judging me without hearing both sides of the story. A few admitted they felt manipulated by the information they had been given. My parents, however, refused to accept responsibility. They insisted that family loyalty should have mattered more than the reason behind the debt. They argued that Ryan still needed help regardless of how the problem started. In a way, they were right. Ryan did need help, but not the kind they wanted me to provide. Throwing money at the problem would only delay the consequences of his actions. It wouldn't address the addiction that created the debt in the first place. A few weeks later, Ryan finally admitted everything. He confessed to years of gambling, lying, and hiding financial problems. For the first time, he stopped making excuses. He acknowledged the damage he had caused and agreed to seek professional help. That conversation was difficult, but it was also necessary. For the first time in years, I saw genuine accountability from him. Recovery wasn't immediate. It took time, counseling, and significant lifestyle changes. There were setbacks along the way, but gradually, Ryan began rebuilding his life. Our relationship also improved, not because I paid his debts, because I stopped enabling his mistakes. Looking back, I realized the hardest part wasn't refusing the money. The hardest part was standing firm while everyone accused me of being selfish. Sometimes people confuse boundaries with selfishness. They assume saying no means you don't care. In reality, healthy boundaries often come from caring enough to stop destructive patterns. If I had given Ryan the money, nothing would have changed. He would have avoided consequences, and the underlying problem would have continued. Instead, the truth forced everyone to confront reality. My parents spent years protecting their favorite child from accountability. They believed love meant rescuing him from every mistake. In the end, that approach only made things worse. Real support isn't always comfortable. Sometimes real support means allowing someone to face the results of their choices. Today, Ryan is doing better than he was back then. Our parents have slowly started recognizing how their favoritism affected both of us. They aren't perfect, but they understand things differently now. As for me, I no longer feel guilty for saying no. The moment my parents called me selfish, I questioned myself. When relatives criticized me, I doubted myself. But when the truth finally came out, I realized something important. Protecting your future is not selfish. Refusing to fund someone else's harmful behavior is not selfish. And setting boundaries with people you love is not selfish. Sometimes the most responsible decision is also the most difficult one. I learned that lesson the hard way.